is Y'all 106.7 playing the best country in Nashville. And someone who has written some of that best country is here in the studio today. We have Steve Dorff. Hello.
Hey, Aaron.
Yay.
Thank you.
We are so excited to have you in today. How are you?
I'm great. It's good to be here. It's
Yay.
good to be in air conditioning.
Yes, that is something everyone in the greater Nashville area can agree on. Well, I was going through our song list. Obviously, we only play 80s and 90s country, and you have written 16 of the artists that we play every day. And the crazy part about that is just the smallest fraction of the actual number of people you've written for overall. And you've written for all types of genres. And something that I'm very curious to learn about is what is one consistency that you have found in your many years of songwriting, that it doesn't matter what the genre is, it's something you apply to all or most of the music you write?
That's a really good question. And when people ask me, young writers ask me, to give them advice, I always say, write what you know. And I think I've applied that to my career. I've always written what I've lived or what I've experienced. Or what I think how I wished I would have experienced it, and but it always comes from a organic place of something that I feel like I've lived through.
So, would you say that when you write throughout all the different decades that you've written songs for instance, you've written number one songs across 4 decades, we see how quickly taste in music changes, especially in a shorter span of time than 10 years. I mean, what people like and want to hear or even want to sing about can change from year to year. Is that same principle of writing what you know still applicable to all the decades you've written for, or is there something else you found?
My method and my the way I go about writing songs has never changed from the time I started when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of do what I do and hope that there's someone out there that wants to salute, by recording one of my songs. I've been so blessed to have had so many great artists record my songs, and so I just keep hoping that there's still some out there that want to do that. Now, granted, you're right. Music has changed. The way we go about recording has changed.
Mm-hmm.
The technology has changed. So that's challenging. But for me, again, I just know how to do one thing. I try to write a great melody and words that people can relate to, and I think that's what makes hits.
It's fascinating you say that it hasn't changed, because the first thing that comes to mind is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And clearly it's not broke, because you've been so successful.
Yeah, thank you.
No, go ahead.
No, I I keep trying to do the same thing. I just try to make it sound, I try very hard not to kind of copy what I do, although people do and have said to me over the years, oh yeah, that's a Dorff chord, or that's that progression you do, or that voicing of the way you voice a certain chord is so unique to what you do. And I think all good writers have their signature, if you want to call it that.
Dorff chord, I hope you get that copyrighted or trademarked or something. That's awesome. So you say that you don't really copy anything you do from song to song, but there is that line of, okay, what makes you you? So how do you find that balance of, okay, well, I don't want to copy and paste something too much, but I still want to stay true to, who I am and what my style is?
Yeah, I stay true to what I do. I don't, when disco came in, it was a big timeout. I know what I'm really good at, and I know what I'm not. And so I try to stay within the framework of what I feel is being true to myself. I don't try to And
Yeah.
again, that goes back to write what you know.
Yeah. Learning what you're not good at is just as powerful or more powerful than learning what you are good at.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so important, especially as, I learned my way through working in broadcast. It's being creative in a different way, but it's like, okay, maybe this isn't my strength, and that's good to know so that moving forward I can just focus on what my strengths are. So when you're writing or when you've written with people that we play, for instance, George Strait or Dolly Parton or Reba, maybe they're not necessarily in the room with you. Maybe in some of the instances I just mentioned, they were. Were you with any of these artists in the room working on the songs together, or were you separate? And
when we were recording them, when I was writing them, no. Because
Gotcha.
Which always goes to the frequently asked question, did you have George Strait in mind when you wrote I Cross My Heart? And no, I didn't. I never have any of the artists. Very, very rarely, unless it's a targeted project, like a movie song, or, we're going to have so-and-so record this song. So then I'll listen to that artist to get a feel of what they do and then try to tailor something to them. But I would say 98% of the time, I'm just writing in a vacuum, and I wrote I Cross My Heart for Boys to Men.
No way.
Yeah, and Bette Midler recorded it 7 years before George did.
Oh my gosh. Wait, okay, we're going to go down a rabbit hole. I love Boys to Men. So you wrote that for thinking it was going to go to them, and then how did that's so different. How did George Strait end up with it?
Story, and I tell those stories when I'm out performing doing my show, which, by the way,
Yes!
I am doing a show on August 29th, a week from today.
Yes.
At City
I will be
Winery.
there. I'm very excited.
I hope you'll come. It's really going to be fun. I'm kind of doing it a little retro. I've asked. I have guest singers. After you hear me sing one or two of my hits, you'll know why you never heard me on the radio. And so I'm having Lee Greenwood and Con Hunley, who I had a big hit with as both a writer and producer. Lee, who I wrote 2 big hits for. Who else do I got coming? Sam Bailey from London.
Phil Vassar will be there.
And Phil,
He's awesome.
Who's my good buddy. And so, yeah, it should be a fun night.
Yeah. What's the best part about getting in that room with people you've worked with and just getting to tell stories to people who you don't know, who might not know you, or some of the other people that are with you? What's the most electrifying part of that experience?
It's all fun. I mean, to cut back to your other question of being in the room with the artists, that to me is so amazing, and I still pinch myself because I have been fortunate enough to be in the studio when they're recording my songs. And every one of these amazing artists brings something new and different, both personality-wise, their voice. I've been in the studio with Reba, with Dolly, with Barbra Streisand, with Celine Dion, with Kenny Rogers. I mean, it's all with Ringo. I mean, people ask me, what's the greatest experience you've ever had? And I don't know if it's the greatest, but because...
it's hard to pick.
But Ringo was just kind of, because I was such a boyhood fan of the Beatles. And so it's all so different, and I like I wrote a book, talking about the different experiences and how unique each one is. And there are some where I just write the song, and I don't know who's going to record it.
Yeah.
And then I get a phone call saying, hey, so-and-so is recording your song tomorrow in California or in Nashville when I'd be in California. And so some of them I have not been involved in at all, the production side of the song. I hear it when you do on the radio for the first time sometimes.
Oh, that is just so incredible. So can you tease some of the other headlines or the stories that you may tell us at City Winery on the 29th?
Yeah, I kind of, there's such great stories behind all these songs and and the fine line between amazing success and dismal failure, of which
Yeah.
I've experienced both. And
Both
the
very
amazing
important.
success part is a lot more fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the case of I Cross My Heart, I mean, Boyz II Men hated that song. Hated it. And passed, and I played that song for everyone I knew for 8 years before I got hired to do a little movie called Pure Country. Wow. And I did all the music for that movie. And I didn't know George, and I didn't know really much about him. I was an L.A. guy doing a lot of pop music.
Yeah.
And doing a lot of film music.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I was hired to do the film. And came down to play the song for George because the director loved it.
Mm-hmm.
He had been looking through 300-400 songs to find that perfect song for the end of the movie. And I played it for him, and he loved it. And we came down and played for George. And it wasn't so easy.
Yeah, I imagine not.
Getting him to, it was different for
Yeah.
him. It had some chords. It did a key change that he was not used to. I mean, I Cross My Heart is not all my exes live in Texas. And so there was a bit of a jousting that goes on whenever you play a song for an artist. But fortunately, he was the right voice. It was the great. I always say, what makes hits are the perfect marriage between the right voice and the right song.
Beautiful. I want that on a
Midler-
T-shirt.
That Midler recorded I Cross My Heart, and it was not a good recording. In fact, it was. I hope she's not listening. It was really bad. But to her credit, it wasn't the right. It just wasn't. She couldn't wrap her head around it. She liked it enough to record it, but then when she heard herself doing it, I think she just said, "This isn't who I am as an artist."
Wow. And that takes, from the writing, producing, artist standpoint, that takes guts to just know yourself enough to be like, not for me.
There's a lot that goes into it, and a writer like me, I was never part of a camp.
Sure.
Or part of a big publishing company. I never had that machine behind me. I was always from one song to the next. And when someone recorded my song, I'd go home at the end of the day and think, well, that's never going to happen again. So, it's kind of like when you get hired to do a movie and finish a project, and you go, well, I fooled him one more time.
Yep.
So.
Amazing. Well, it's my understanding you might have a Kenny Rogers story to share.
Oh yeah. Well, the best story about Kenny recorded, I think, 8 or 9 of my songs over the years. And, but one day Lionel Richie and Kenny were looking for songs for Kenny's new album, and Lionel was producing. They had just come off Lady, which was one of the biggest records of the century. And Kenny was hating everything that day that Lionel was playing him. And Lionel was holding one of my songs that he was thinking about recording himself as a reunion song with the Commodores. And he said, for whatever serendipitous reason, he pulled the cassette out and he said, look, Kenny, let me play you something that I really love, and maybe if you like it, at least I'll have a direction to go the next time we get together and play songs. And Kenny just didn't want to hear anything that day. And they started playing my song, and about midway through the chorus, Kenny's wife was walking through the living room. They were at Kenny's house, and she said she stopped, listened to a little of it, walked over to Kenny and said, "You're recording this song." Wow. It was Through the Years. And what if she had been playing tennis that day?
Yeah.
What if she was buying shoes at the mall? What if she
Oh
was
my
anywhere
gosh.
but walking through that living room at that exact
That moment.
That song may never have happened.
Shout out to Kenny Rogers' wife for making this happen.
Marianne Rogers.
And
it was Marianne at the time.
And his heavenly birthday just passed yesterday.
Yep.
So how serendipitous we're talking about him and you and that song today.
Yeah, well, Kenny was great to
Yeah.
me, and he recorded a whole bunch of my songs, and but that obviously was the standard. He made it a standard. So
My goodness. Well, I do want to do a quick book plug because we have it sitting right here.
oh, thanks. Thank you.
I wrote that one too. Can we hear me? I'm close enough now. I wrote that one too. Steve Dorff. I know you said that you've written a lot of the stories of your time working as a songwriter. I've lived in Nashville 2 years, and I already need to start a book with everything crazy that's happened to me.
Right.
What have you written about in here?
It's really a memoir, I think. I had no aspirations to write a book. I was doing a show in Danbury, Connecticut, and some woman walked up to me after the show and said, you really don't sing worth a damn, but your stories are great. You should write a book. And I looked at her and I said, well, gee, thanks.
Thank you.
And she didn't use exactly those words either. So it turns out she was a literary agent. She said, if you'll write a book, I'll get you a book deal.
Amazing.
And I said,
Wow.
lady, I have enough trouble writing a 3.5-minute song. I don't know how I could ever write a book. And she took my email, and about 3 months later, she emailed me and said, better start writing. And it was one of the greatest cathartic
I bet.
projects I've ever done. Just putting me back in touch with how I got started, because you don't really think about that stuff as you're going through life. You don't really reflect back, or at least I didn't. I was just so straight ahead. What's next? What's next? And writing that book, forced me to really look back at all the roads not taken, as well as the roads that we do take, that sometimes aren't necessarily the right roads, the detours, it was a pretty cool.
Well, I can't wait to read it, and I'm also very excited to hear about all the right, wrong, and questionable roads at City Winery on the 29th here in Nashville. It's going to be such a great show, and
Thank you.
I can't wait to hear everything.
Yeah.
Steve Dorff, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.